Hi, I'd like to welcome you all to Camden Arts Centre and to the book launch for Bernard Walsh. Bernard and I have known one another for many a year, and it's a pleasure to have him here reading the book. I've read it and I've laughed out loud on the tube, and at the very end I texted Bernard and I said I thought it was very brave. It is a brave book and very compelling, so let's have some readings. Here we go.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you very much for asking me to come today, and thank you. Camden's very special to me because I used to work here 30 years ago, over in that corner actually, when Atlantis had a little art materials shop. Thank you all for coming, and I'll begin. Sartre is waiting to become what he wants to become through writing about what he's still trying to figure out, a way to put his thoughts into words. So he spends hours that turn into days, that turn into weeks, that turn into months, that turn into a lifetime of asking himself, is this really what I'm meant to be doing? Sartre is marking his presence on the earth, trying to make sense of the situation through writing words that will eventually represent his thoughts, as if those thoughts were still alive. Does that make sense, Sartre thinks? Can a thought have a life of its own? He doesn't like the words, but he starts to write them down just in case. Can, scratch, a thought, scratch, scratch, ever scratch, have a life, scratch, scratch, of its own, scratch, scratch, scratch? Oh no, what's happening? Now we're travelling through time and space. Losing you, Sartre. We're losing you. Flying across an ocean, entering another time zone. No longer in Paris, we're in New York. And oh my goodness, it is, isn't it? It's Carrie Bradshaw. We see her through an open window until the camera moves us into the room, where we see her typing a script, which the actress, Sarah Jessica Parker, who plays Carrie in the television series Sex and the City and 2 subsequent movies, is just about to say the words that will enable us to understand those words represent Carrie's thoughts, as if those thoughts were escaping from somewhere that is deep within her subconscious. Some might call it her soul. Others might call it, I don't know what they might want to call it. But whatever it is deep. It is very deep. And it's late at night, and Carrie is alone in her room with her thoughts. The walls in the apartment are painted blue, an ocean blue, but the shade is very similar to Benjamin Moore's electric blue. There's an undercurrent of white elements in the room, including billowing curtains, ceramic lamps, an old leather armchair, and mid-century credenza with sliding doors that hides an amount of clutter. Of course, Carrie is totally unaware of our presence. She explains, while she continues to click away at her computer, before she tilts her head to one side and then to the other. Hold it there, Sarah. Beautiful. Now let your eyes drift to one side a little, but don't look at anything. You're lost in that thought, whatever it is. As you lift your right arm, Sarah. Lift your right arm above your head and move your hand across your forehead. Relax your fingers, and yes, touch your eyebrow. It might loosen the thought, and it does. It does the trick. Now you're ready to say the words that you're already typing into the computer, as if you're thinking out loud. I wonder if a thought can have a life of its own. I used to have a girlfriend named Elsie, with whom I shared 4 solid rooms in Chelsea. She wasn't what you'd call a blushing flower. As a matter of fact, she rented by the hour. The day she died, the neighbours came to snicker. Well, that's what comes of too much pills and liquor. But when I saw her laid out like a queen, she was the happiest corpse I'd ever seen. In the distance, someone is singing, Bring Me Sunshine. Then they stop and wait for before they start to sing the same words. Bring me sunshine, bring me sunshine. After a while, I can't hear it anymore when they stop, because I'm remembering what I assume are the missing words. The sound is already there and about to play when I wake up. I must have fallen asleep. For how long, I'm not sure. What was I doing in my dreams? No, here, where I'm still listening to the same words playing over and over again. Bring me sunshine, bring me sunshine, bring me sunshine. I'll have to get up to turn it off. There's a little ball of fluff gathered underneath the needle that's stuck in the middle of a groove. The word is out of fashion now, but once it was the fashion, when everything was groovy. All those images and sounds of what life was like, captured on so many different types of surface. I must have scratched it when I lifted the needle up. I always lift it up at that point, because I don't like the song. It reminds me of Morecambe and Wise, who used to sing it at the end of one of their shows. Bring me sunshine in your smile, bring me laughter all the while. There they were, standing on stage in front of a live studio audience and millions of other viewers at home, singing a song about what they wanted. In this world where we live, there should be more happiness. So much joy you can give to its brand new bright tomorrow. And what they didn't want. Never bring me any tears. Let your arms be as warm as the sun from up above. Bring me fun, bring me sunshine, bring me love. It's all about them, isn't it? I don't mean Morecambe and Wise. I mean the person who wrote the song. But while they were singing it, weren't we supposed to imagine it was them? That they were the ones who didn't want to have to deal with the problem of what being in a relationship often requires. A little bit of give and take here and there once in a while. What about moments where sorrows occur? Isn't that also a part of what happens through life and what a relationship must endure? Those moments where one or other of you feels angry, alone, upset, unsure what to do, irritated, frustrated. There's something you can't seem to get off your chest. You can feel it, but you don't know what it is. So you turn to the other, but they say, no, never bring me any tears, only happiness and more happiness, and so much joy you can give to each brand new bright tomorrow. As if tomorrow is going to be the same as it was today, and as it will have to be every other day from now on, an endless stream of sunshine. Otherwise, I don't think the relationship will last, which is fine. Not all relationships are meant to last forever. There was something about Morecambe and Wise I could never figure out. What were they doing, for instance, in one of their most famous comedy sketches, where Ernie, Wise, was sitting up in bed making notes for another one of the plays what he wrote, while Eric, Morecambe, was sitting on the other side of what we soon discovered was their bed, smoking a pipe, as if it was normal, the most natural thing in the world. And why not? What's so funny about that? Nowadays, we might assume they were homosexual, but in those days that was impossible. Although the law had recently changed, so it was no longer a criminal offence to be a homosexual, it wasn't allowed to be shown in public, only in the privacy of one another's homes. It certainly wasn't something we'd be able to watch on television, for fear I imagine it might spread like wildfire, like it did in Sodom and Gomorrah and in ancient Greece and Rome. So what sense were we supposed to make of a situation where Eric and Ernie were sleeping together? Initially, I know Eric didn't want to play the scene, because of what I assume he thought the audience would think. But then the scriptwriter, Eddie Braden, who wrote the scene, reminded him that Laurel and Hardy used to sleep together, and no one ever thought they were homosexual. So Eric said yes, he would do it, if he was allowed to smoke a pipe in bed, which might seem odd. But in those days it was normal. Most people smoked when and wherever they wanted, on buses, trains, aeroplanes, cinemas, cafes, bars, restaurants, plumes of silver white and grey smoke wafting through the air everywhere. Politicians smoked, chat show hosts, celebrities, the world and his wife, even members of the royal family used to smoke, mainly cigarettes. That's what Eric smoked, about 60 cigarettes a day, until he had his first heart attack. Then doctors told him he had to stop. So he started to smoke a pipe instead, but it was never the same. I don't know, there's something about a cigarette, a certain je ne sais quoi. They come in boxes of 10 or 20, made for sharing. Would anyone like a cigarette? Or for chatting someone up in a bar or at a bus stop. Oh, thank you, I don't mind if I do. That's how it was in those days. It was okay to watch a man smoking a pipe in bed, but not to see two men sleeping together. Yet no one seemed to question why. Why were Eric and Ernie sleeping together? Was it because we were meant to assume they were innocent, like two little boys who'd never grown up? There was never a hint of anything untoward going on between them. Eric would occasionally slap Ernie around the face, while Ernie smiled because he knew what we all knew. For goodness sake, it was just a joke. Now I realise I wasn't listening to Morecambe Wise before I fell asleep. I was listening to Willie Nelson, who sang another version of the same song, Bring Me Sunshine, on his album Spotlight on Willie. But I didn't want to hear him sing that song. I wanted to hear him sing a different song, Everybody's Talking, which he recorded on the same album. So I gently blew the little ball of fluff off the needle and put it back onto what I thought was the right track. But as soon as it started to play, I knew it wasn't the one. It was too slow. The version of the song I wanted to hear was much faster and goes something like this. Da 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 da. I'm going where the sun keeps shining. Da 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 da. Going where the weather suits my clothes. The song was played during the credit sequence of John Schlesinger's 1969 movie, Midnight Cowboy. I remember at the beginning of the movie, before the credit sequence began, watching what appeared to be an empty screen, while listening to the sound of horses galloping away, with men whooping and wailing and gunshots being fired, a combination of sounds that might have come from any one of numerous westerns that Hollywood used to make. Then something started flickering across the screen, a grey shadow or a remnant of an old tracking shot, that made me realise I wasn't looking at an empty screen. I was looking at an image of an old movie screen, where once upon a time an audience might have watched cowboys chasing after Indians, or Indians chasing after cowboys, or whichever way around it was, men chasing after other men. Cowboys wearing tightly fitted jeans, riding horses across the Nevada desert and through the Rocky Mountains before the winter came, and it would be impossible to make it through the pass. Then the camera starts to pull away, opening up the scene, until we see what's happening behind the screen, a half dozen or so riderless horses grazing along a wooden fence next to a children's playground, where an object resembling a child is rocking quite furiously back and forth on a metal rocking horse, making it squeak, a repetitive and irritating sound, like a couple making love in a room next door. Then a man's voice starts singing, "Whoopity, get along, little doggies," while the camera continues to move our attention further away from where we thought we were until we see a sign for the big text "Drive-In." At this point, the camera moves to another scene, where we see the man who is singing. He is singing in the shower, but we can't see his face, only his left foot tapping along to the rhythm of the same song, which he carries on singing until he drops the soap. When he bends down to pick it up, the camera moves swiftly all over his body and stays on him while he continues to rub the soap across his shoulders and chest. Then, when it looks as if he's about to turn around, and we'll be able to see him completely naked, with soap suds streaming down his back, the camera moves to another scene, where we see he's already out of the shower and standing in front of a mirror, spraying deodorant under his arms and across his shoulders and chest. Why did the director decide to cut the movie at this point? It doesn't seem to make sense. The man is still singing the next line from the song, "It's your misfortune and then my own," as if there hasn't been a break in between the moment where we see him washing himself in the shower and the next moment where we see him already out of the shower and standing in front of a mirror. Perhaps this is where the director told everyone to stop. Right, everyone, stop. That was great. Now can we please get ready for the next scene? And while they're moving all the equipment around, the director goes over to speak to the actor. An assistant passes him a towel. The actor looks nervous when he sees the director approaching. The director passes him the towel and says, "Thank you, John. That was brilliant." John Voight, looks relieved. "Now, I want you to think about the next scene. Yes, that's right, wrap the towel around your waist. No, not too tightly. Let it slip a little, and a little more. Another inch, that's great. Now, when you're standing in front of the mirror, I don't want you to look at the mirror. I want you to look through it, as if it isn't there. And imagine there's no one else in the room. You're on your own and so totally absorbed by what you see, yourself in the mirror, you forget about everyone else. You even forget about yourself. There is no other you, only what you can see, yourself in the mirror, moving yourself through his body. Is that all right?" "Yes," John says, "that's all right." Then he goes over to look at himself in the mirror while he's trying to remember what the director told him he had to forget. Remember, there's no one else in the room, no other me, only what I can see. Myself in the mirror, moving myself through his body. Months of careful planning must have gone into making the scene look exactly like what the director wanted it to look like. A moment where the audience would be able to see the actor twice. Once where he has his back turned towards us while he's facing himself in the mirror, and the other where he's looking at himself in the mirror while he's trying to remember what he's supposed to forget. Then the action begins. And the relationship between sound and image becomes increasingly complex when other voices and other characters come into play with our sense of where we are supposed to be. First we hear a woman calling out, as if from nowhere, "Where's that Joe Bug?" Then we see a black man in a white uniform washing dishes. He calls out, "Where's that Joe Bug?" Then we hear another man's voice calling out, "Where's that Joe Bug?" At the same time, we're looking at a black woman peering through a serving hatch piled up high with dirty dishes. I think it's the first woman who first called out, "Where's that Joe Bug?" This time she repeats the question in a slower and more exasperated tone. "Where's our Joe Bug? Look at all this crap." Then we see a white man's hand reaching into a hat box and taking out what appears to be a brand new Stetson hat. And we know it's him. The man we've been watching, washing himself in the shower, then standing in front of the mirror, spraying deodorant under his arms and across his shoulders and chest. He's Joe Bug, or at least we think it's him, because for the first time he stops singing. He stops singing and looks away from the mirror towards the camera, because he's about to acknowledge the voice is calling out for him. "Where's that Joe Bug?" But he doesn't answer. He just repeats the same question. "Yeah, where's that Joe Bug?" At this point, the camera moves our attention towards his chest, while we watch him buttoning up a fancy green shirt, elaborately embroidered with gold and silver horseshoes and 5-pointed stars. His chest is smooth, hairless, and evenly tanned. I don't think it's real. I don't mean his chest. I mean the tan. I don't think it's real. I think it's a fake tan. Now the camera moves our attention towards his crotch while we watch him zipping up his fly. I think he's almost ready. Then we see a white man in a white uniform looking straight into camera as he announces, "You're due here at 4 o'clock. What are we supposed to think? Is the man speaking to Joe? No, we see he's still at work, in the same place where the dishes are still piling up, while Joe is still in the same room, putting on a fancy pair of cowboy boots. Or is this a moment where the audience has to imagine this is all going on inside Joe's mind? Joe looks straight to camera, as if he's practicing his response, and says, "And you know what you can do with those dishes, and if you ain't man enough to do it for yourself, I'd be happy to oblige. I really would." Joe is happy to oblige the man who isn't really there to do what exactly with those dishes? I think he's happy to oblige the man who isn't really there to shove them where the sun don't shine, as if this is what I think it is often assumed to be, an ultimate threat to penetrate that part of man's body where nature would otherwise take its course. That sounds so coy. I know what I want to say. I want to say something about my own desire. The thoughts are there, but not the words. So I latch onto the words that were given to the actor to speak, and I let those words become my own. And if you ain't man enough to do it for yourself, I'd be happy to oblige. I really would. It is such a courteous expression, as if it would be Joe's pleasure to serve the man who isn't really there, if first of all he'll entrust himself to Joe to take on a more assertive role. Throughout the movie, scenes move into one another and through one another, as many times as might be required to make us think about what's supposed to be going on between the different scenes, while we have to imagine ourselves moving through those moments. Now we see Joe's fully dressed up to look like a rodeo cowboy, with a cigarette pursed between his lips. He strikes a match, lights a cigarette, then quickly turns around to see himself in front of a mirror. He smiles, takes aim, and then fires the matchstick toward the mirror, as if he is dispelling the image in front of him. This moment reminds me of another moment in Martin Scorsese's 1976 movie Taxi Driver, which was shown 7 years after Midnight Cowboy was originally shown to cinema audiences right across the United States of America and then around the rest of the world. In Taxi Driver, we see Robert De Niro playing a character called Travis, who is standing in front of a mirror. And I don't think it's impossible to imagine the influence one movie might have had on another. Isn't that how it works in cinema? As it does in every other aspect of our lives. Things correspond with one another all the time, moving through memories, combining several moments all at once. While we're thinking about this, we're still thinking about that. When I saw De Niro standing in front of the mirror, I wondered what thoughts must have been going through his mind. Was he thinking about Joe? Or was he just trying to remember what the director told him what he had to do, how to play the scene? Remember, Bob, there's no one else in the room, no other you, only what you can see, yourself in the mirror, moving yourself through his body. But I'm not in that moment anymore. No one is. So I'll never know for sure what thoughts were going through his mind. Even if, in the subsequent interview, De Niro tells us he was thinking this or that, his memory, like all memories, is inevitably insecure, shifting ideas this way or that way until it's time for him to deliver those immortal lines. You talking to me? You talking to me? You talking to me? Then who the hell else are you talking to? You talking to me? Well, I'm the only one here. Who the fuck, excuse me, do you think you're talking to? I still remember seeing another actor standing on stage talking to an audience as if it wasn't there, before he moved toward the edge of the stage to ask himself this question. To be or not to be? A question I imagine every actor has to ask him or herself. To what extent can they convince themselves, and those of us who are the audience, that they have become the character they were supposed to become? I imagine a discussion must have taken place between Martin Scorsese and Robert De Niro while they were preparing De Niro for his scene in front of the mirror. Hey Bob, do you remember Hamlet's soliloquy, to be or not to be? Oh yeah, Martin, I love that. To be or not to be, that's the question. Whether it is nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of trouble. That's great, Bob. Really great. Well, you got to remember, when you're standing in front of the mirror saying, "Are you talking to me? Are you talking to me?" It's your Hamlet moment. And you have to speak the same rhythm as to be or not to be. And as if to reinforce the point, Scorsese starts to clap his hands together while he repeats the same sound over and over again. Ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. Can you hear that, Bob? It's like a heartbeat. Ba-bum, ba-bum, ba-bum. It sure is, Martin. Now join in with me. Ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. And while Bob's singing, ba-bum, 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 Martin starts to sing. It has to be the same rhythm as to be or not to be, Bob continues. Ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. Well, Martin continues. It has to be the same rhythm as to be or not to be. Ba-bum, ba-bum, ba-bum. It has to be the same rhythm as to be. Ba-bum, ba-bum, ba-bum. It has to be the same rhythm. Bob calls out. Now, Martin, on the count of a 1 and a 2 and a 1, 2, 3, and they both repeat. It has to be the same rhythm as to be or not to be. Then Bob starts to sing, but this time on his own. Dum de dum 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 de dum de dum dum de dum de dum de dum 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 de dum de dum dum. Martin laughs, shakes his head, and then joins in as they both start to sing a rapturous rendition of "I'm singing in the rain, just singing in the rain, and what a glorious feeling, I'm happy again." Or Martin might say to Bob, "Hey Bob, do you remember that moment in Midnight Cowboy where you see Joe Buck standing in front of a mirror?" "Sure, Martin, I love that movie." "Yeah, we all do, Bob. We all do." "Well, I want you to forget about Joe. Travis is nothing like Joe. Joe's always preening himself in front of a mirror or trying to catch a glimpse of himself while he's walking down the street, because he's getting himself ready to sell himself to anyone who'll pay the price for a piece of what he has to offer them. And what he imagines is all those New York dames are going to be there waiting for him when he gets off the bus in New York City. But it ain't the dames, Bob. No, it ain't the dames. They ain't the ones who are going to be there waiting for him when he gets off the bus in New York City. It's the faggots, Bob. They're the ones who are going to be there waiting for him. And when they see him all dressed up looking like a lonesome cowboy wandering into town, they're going to know what they want to do with him, Bob. What's that, Martin? They're going to want to explore every inch of what he has to offer. And when they've taken all they can take from what he has to offer them, they're going to have to destroy him, Bob. Why is that, Martin? Because he's their dream, Bob. And there ain't no way they can let that dream become a nightmare. Anyway, you've seen the movie, so you know what happens. Then Bob starts to sing. Whoopity, get along with doggies, your misfortune, and then my own. Whoopity, get along with doggies. Bob, I said you ain't nothing like Joe.